Imagine a heartwarming tale of family reunion, filled with joy and hope. But what if this idyllic scenario took a dark and twisted turn? This case is a chilling reminder that even the most innocent-looking relationships are in fact the most disturbing. Meet Stephen and Katie, father and daughter, their lives intertwined by fate and circumstance. Their unusual family relationship, hidden from the world, would soon become the center of a tragic saga. What begins as a seemingly ordinary story of family reunion would soon take a horrifying turn. The unexpected twists and turns of their lives would lead to consequences that no one could have imagined, forever altering the course of their destinies. On April 12, 2018, a seemingly ordinary day turned into a nightmare for the Plattle family. Stephen and Katie Plattle, father and daughter, were at the center of a horrifying series of events that would forever change not only their lives, but the lives of those around them. Hidden beneath the surface of their seemingly ordinary lives, a forbidden love affair had unfolded between Stephen and Katie. An evil family truth, and how it could stay hidden. It had to come out, and when it did, it made every living soul question the basics of the most pure relationships humans have. They understood that this was not the right approach, and their actions led to catastrophic consequences, quite contrary to what they had anticipated. There would be a series of events that would till the end serve as a tragedy in the lives of the affected one. Join us as we dive into the chilling tale of Stephen and Katie Plattle. Stephen Plattle came from a relatively ordinary upbringing in New York. Little is known about his childhood or adolescence, but it was during his young adulthood that his life took a dark turn. In 1995, at the age of 20, Stephen met Alyssa Garcia, a 15-year-old girl, online. Despite the age difference, they quickly formed a bond and had an immediate connection. Despite Alyssa's young age, Stephen was drawn to her, and the relationship blossomed into a secret romance. Alyssa, a sophomore in high school, was swept away by Stephen's charms and attention. Innocent as she was, she could not see through the manipulative tactics he was employing to groom her. Stephen carefully cultivated the relationship, keeping it hidden from Alyssa's family and friends. He was so driven by his desires that he went from New York all the way to Texas to meet her. Their relationship grew increasingly intense, culminating in Alyssa running away from home to be with Stephen in New York. She cut off ties with her family and friends, blinded by her love for him. Katie, born Denise Plattle in 1998, was the product of Alyssa and Stephen's relationship when Alyssa got pregnant at the age of 16. As a young child, Katie experienced firsthand the abuse and neglect inflicted on her by her father. When she was born in 1998, it quickly became evident that Stephen exhibited concerning traits that would foreshadow the violence to come. According to Alyssa, Denise's mother, Stephen's abuse tendencies emerged almost immediately. Alyssa recounted harrowing details of Stephen's treatment of their infant daughter. He would do things like cover her mouth when she would cry. He pinched her all over her body until she turned black and blue. The abuse escalated to the point where Stephen, overwhelmed by Denise's cries, resorted to placing her in a cooler or ice chest to silence her. Sometimes he would leave a blanket slightly ajar to keep a crack open, but other times he would shut it completely, forcing Alyssa to wait outside. When she was finally allowed to open it, Alyssa would find Denise gasping for air, drenched in sweats and covered in bruises. Alyssa, realizing the danger Stephen posed to Katie, made the heartbreaking decision to place her daughter for adoption. She knew it was the only way to ensure Katie's safety and give her a chance at a better life. She wanted her daughter to have a future filled with love and safety, qualities that were glaringly absent in her home with Stephen. Alyssa's fears for Denise's well-being overshadowed her own maternal instincts, leading her to believe that relinquishing her parental rights was the best choice. Katie, whose name was changed from Denise at the time of her adoption, was taken in by the loving Fusco family. They provided her with a stable and supportive home. She grew up surrounded by love and encouragement, unaware of the dark secrets that connected her to her biological parents. Despite the challenges and abuse, Alyssa and Stephen remained together. They eventually married in 2006, after Stephen moved to Richmond, Virginia. In 2016, Katie, now an adult, felt a growing desire to learn more about her biological family. Driven by curiosity and a longing for answers, she embarked on a journey to find her birth parents. Through social media, she managed contact with Alyssa, her biological mother. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Katie reached out to Alyssa, sending her a message expressing her desire to connect. Alyssa, who had been searching for Katie for years, was overjoyed to receive her message. After months of online communication, Katie decided to visit Alyssa in North Carolina. The reunion was a bittersweet moment, filled with both joy and uncertainty. Katie met her biological mother for the first time, and they quickly formed a bond. Following the reunion, Katie made a difficult decision to take a gap year from college and move to North Carolina to live with her biological family. This decision was met with mixed reactions from her adoptive parents, who were supportive but also concerned about the potential challenges she might face. Alyssa's excitement was tempered by the living arrangements within the household. Stephen, Katie's biological father, was sleeping on the couch, while Alyssa occupied the bedroom. Katie was given her own room, but she spent most of her time with Stephen and her two younger sisters. At the time when Katie decided to move in with her biological family in August 2016, Stephen and Alyssa were already separated and sleeping in different rooms. Katie, unaware of her father's past, quickly developed a close bond with him. She spent most of her days at home with him and her two younger sisters. Alyssa, overjoyed with her firstborn, was happy to have Katie living with them. However, she soon noticed concerning changes in Stephen's behavior. He began dressing differently, wearing tight clothes and growing his hair out, seemingly in an attempt to look younger and close to Katie's age. 6 weeks after Katie's arrival, Alyssa discovered that Stephen was no longer sleeping on the couch, but had moved to the floor of Katie's bedroom, a move that deeply unsettled her. Alyssa confronted Stephen about his inappropriate behavior, reminding him of his violent past and warning Katie to be cautious around him. However, Katie brushed off her concerns, believing that Stephen had changed and that she could trust him. This response revealed the extent to which Katie had already been manipulated and groomed by her father. Alyssa's unease grew as she noticed the striking physical similarities between Katie and her younger self. One day she could no longer ignore the disturbing dynamic between Stephen and Katie. She confronted them both, sparking a heated argument that ended with Stephen and Katie storming out of the house together. 3 months later, in November 2016, Alyssa gathered the courage to leave Stephen, taking her 2 daughters with her and filing for divorce. This decision left Stephen and Katie alone in the house, free to explore their twisted desires without interference. In May 2017, Alyssa made a shocking discovery while cleaning her 11-year-old daughter's room. The girl's journal revealed that Stephen and Katie were sexually involved, that Katie was pregnant with Stephen's child, and that the 2 children had been told to refer to Katie as their stepmother. The journal entry stated, "She is pregnant and gained weight, and my dad calls her baby also his baby. Did he make her pregnant? My dad says that she's my stepmom. WTF. He doesn't even want me to call her sister anymore, but in nature she's only my sister. Does she see me as a daughter or a sister? Katie now tells me sometimes to get the F up." Alyssa immediately confronted Stephen, who confirmed the relationship and Katie's pregnancy. She was horrified and called the police to report the incestuous relationship. Stephen admitted to Alyssa that he'd been head over heels in love with Katie, and that this feeling had outweighed the issue of them being biologically related. Despite the ongoing police investigation, Stephen and Katie continued their relationship. On July 20, 2017, they got married in Parkton, Maryland, lying on their marriage documents about their relation. The wedding was attended by Stephen's mother and Katie's adoptive parents, who were aware of the situation but felt powerless to intervene. In September 2017, Katie gave birth to her and Stephen's son, Bennett Kieran Paddle. The couple moved to a house in Knightdale, North Carolina, hoping for a fresh start. However, their happiness was short-lived. In January 2018, Stephen and Katie were arrested and charged with incest. Despite their charges, they were released on bond but were ordered to have no contact with each other. Custody of Bennett was granted to Stephen's mother, and Katie moved back in with Tony and Kelly Fusco, her adoptive parents. She informed Stephen over the phone that she did not want to continue their relationship. After being released on bail, Stephen and Katie were subjected to a court order prohibiting them from having contact with each other. This separation forced Katie to return to New York, while Stephen was barred from North Carolina and was living in a hotel room in Virginia. However, on March 16, 2018, the restrictions were lifted, allowing Stephen to return to his home in North Carolina, which was conveniently located near his mother, Grace, who had custody of their son, Bennett. As the days passed, the emotional strain of their situation weighed heavily on both Stephen and Katie. On April 12, 2018, a pivotal moment occurred when Katie called Stephen and informed him of her decision to end their relationship. She expressed her desire for a divorce, stating that the relationship had become toxic and was taking a toll on her well-being. Katie articulated her need to reclaim her life, pursue her interests in art and digital advertising, which she wanted to study in college, and ultimately to break free from the unhealthy dynamic that had ensnared her. This decision was a significant turning point for Katie, as the distance from Stephen allowed her to reflect on the gravity of their situation. She began to recognize the manipulation and control that had defined their relationship. However, Stephen did not take the news lightly. Enraged by Katie's declaration, he exploded in a fit of anger, feeling betrayed and rejected. This emotional turmoil ignited a dangerous desire for revenge, as Stephen sought to retaliate against Katie for what he perceived as her abandonment. Stephen's motivation for his subsequent actions were deeply rooted in a mix of anger, jealousy, and a desperate need to exert control. His history of violent outbursts and unpredictable behavior suggested that he was prone to extreme emotional reactions. The prospect of losing Katie, whom he had groomed and manipulated, triggered a visceral response. In his mind, Katie's decision to leave him was not just a rejection. It was a personal affront that he felt compelled to avenge. The psychology of revenge played a significant role in Stephen's mindset. Research indicates that individuals acting out of anger or jealousy often engage in retaliatory aggression, driven by an intrinsic desire to restore the perceived balance of power. For Stephen, the thought of Katie moving on without him was intolerable. He likely believed that by taking drastic measures, he could reassert his dominance and eliminate the source of his pain. On the evening of April 11, 2018, around 7 p.m., the tragic sequence of events began when Stephen Paddle, filled with rage and desperation after his daughter Katie informed him of her decision to end their incestuous relationship, called his mother Grace. He told her he was on his way to pick up his 7-month-old son Bennett, with the intention of driving to New York City so that Katie could care for him while both parents await trial for their incest charges. However, this plan quickly unraveled as Stephen's emotional state deteriorated. Instead of taking Bennett to see Katie, Stephen returned to his home in Knightdale, North Carolina, where he committed the unthinkable act of murdering his own child. While the exact details surrounding Bennett's death are not publicly available due to his status as a minor, reports indicate that he died from asphyxiation with compression of the torso, suggesting a deliberate and brutal act. After killing Bennett, Stephen concealed his body in a closet, a chilling indication of his mental state and the gravity of his actions. The tragic events of the evening of April 11th were only the beginning. In a fit of rage and depression, Stephen Paddle could not accept Katie's decision. After murdering their 7-month-old son, Bennett, in a brutal act of filicide, he embarked on a 600-mile drive from North Carolina to New York, fueled by the same lust and desire for revenge. He arrived at the home of Katie's adoptive parents, Anthony and Kelly Fusco, parking his blue minivan across the street in the parking lot of a nearby liquor store. From there, he patiently stalked the family, waiting for the moment they would leave for their routine visit to Katie's grandmother's house in Waterbury, Connecticut. On the morning of April 12, Stephen's patience paid off. As anticipated, Katie and her adoptive father, Anthony Fusco, emerged from their home, ready to begin their day. They climbed into their Toyota pickup truck, completely unaware of the danger lurking just a short distance away. Stephen followed closely behind in his minivan, his mind consumed with rage and betrayal. As they approached the intersection, the truck came to a stop at a red light. In that moment, Stephen seized the opportunity. He pulled up alongside their vehicle, rolled down his window, and brandished an Aero assault-type rifle. Witnesses later recounted the horror of that moment as they watched Stephen open fire on the truck, unleashing a barrage of bullets into the cabin. The sound of gunfire echoed through the quiet streets of New Milford, Connecticut, as Stephen emptied his weapon into the truck. Katie and Anthony were struck multiple times in the torso and head, their lives extinguished in an instant. An off-duty firefighter, who had happened to be in the vicinity, witnessed the massacre unfold and quickly dialed 911 to report the shooting. In a frantic call to dispatchers, the firefighter described the scene, stating, "Someone just went by shooting this guy in the truck." The urgency in his voice conveyed the gravity of the situation as he provided details about the vehicles involved, a blue minivan with South Carolina plates. As the police arrived at the scene, they found the bodies of 20-year-old Katie Plattle and her 56-year-old adoptive father Anthony Fusco, still strapped in their seats. Both had been killed instantly, victims of Stephen's uncontrollable rage. The investigation began immediately, with law enforcement searching for the vehicle that had fled the scene. Meanwhile, Stephen's mother, Grace, was in a state of panic. After Stephen had confessed to her about the murders, she called 911, revealing the chilling details of her son's actions. The police quickly mobilized to locate Stephen, who had driven away from the scene of the double murder. Witnesses provided descriptions of the blue minivan, and law enforcement began to piece together the timeline of events. The search intensified as investigators realized the extent of the tragedy that had unfolded. After committing the horrific double murder of his biological daughter, Katie Plattle, and her adoptive father, Anthony Fusco, Stephen Plattle fled the scene in a state of turmoil. The adrenaline from the shooting coursed through his veins, but it was quickly replaced by a chilling realization of what he had done. As he drove away from the intersection in New Milford, Connecticut, he was consumed by a mix of rage, despair, and guilt. In the aftermath of the murders, Stephen made a fateful decision to call his mother, Grace. In a frantic and emotional conversation, he confessed to her the unthinkable acts he had just committed. He killed his wife. He killed her father. "And I can't even believe this is happening," she told the dispatcher, her voice trembling with disbelief and horror. Grace recounted how Stephen left Bennett dead at home, a tragic reminder of the violence that had unfolded. Stephen's confession revealed the depth of his turmoil, as he described the murders and the tragic fates of their infant son Bennett, whom he'd also killed earlier that day. After hanging up the phone, Stephen drove to Dover, New York, where he parked his minivan in a secluded area. The weight of his actions pressed heavily on him, and as the reality of his situation set in, he realized there was no escape for the consequences of his violent spree. In a final act of desperation, Stephen took a firearm and ended his own life. The self-inflicted gunshot wounds marked the tragic conclusion to a series of events that had spiraled out of control, leaving a trail of devastation and heartbreak. The community was left to grapple with the aftermath of the violence, mourning the loss of Katie, Anthony, and Bennett, and reflecting on the tragic circumstances that led to such a horrific end. Following the tragic events of April 12, 2018, the investigation into the murders of Katie Plattle and Anthony Fusco, as well as the death of their infant son, Bennett, quickly unfolded. The Knightdale Police Department and the New Milford Police Department worked in tandem to piece together the harrowing details of the case. The investigation began with a welfare check at Stephen Plattle's residence in Knightdale, North Carolina, after his mother, Grace, expressed concern over the comments he had made during a phone call which he made around 8:45 a.m. on the same day. When the police arrived at the home, they discovered the lifeless body of a 7-month-old, Bennett Plattle, hidden in a closet. The circumstances surrounding his death were grim, and authorities quickly suspected foul play. Simultaneously, police in New Milford responded to reports of a shooting at an intersection where Katie and her adoptive father Anthony were found dead in their vehicle. Witnesses described the horrific scene as Stephen's blue minivan pulled up alongside the pickup truck, and he opened fired with an AR-15-style rifle, striking both victims multiple times. The evidence collected from both crime scenes, including ballistic analysis and witness statements, painted a clear picture of the tragic events that had transpired. With Stephen Plattle deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, there were no further legal proceedings against him. However, the investigation revealed the complex background of the family dynamics that led to these murders. Stephen and Katie had been arrested earlier in January 2018 on charges of incest, adultery, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Both had been released on bail, but conditions prohibited them from contacting each other. Alyssa Plattle, Stephen's ex-wife and Katie's biological mother, expressed her anger and frustration over the court's decision to allow Stephen access to Bennett. She believed that the system had failed to protect the child, stating, "If anyone is brought up on charges of incest, they should never be allowed near minor children." Alyssa also criticized the lack of a psychiatric evaluation for Stephen before his release, highlighting the need for mental health assessments in cases involving such severe allegations. As the investigation unfolded, the legal complexities of the case became evident. Stephen's defense attorney, Rick Friedman, noted that the case was unprecedented and posed unique challenges for the legal system. He argued that Stephen and Katie's relationship was consensual, disputing claims that Katie had been manipulated or brainwashed by her father. Despite the absence of a trial, the evidence gathered during the investigation suggested a pattern of control and manipulation that had characterized Stephen's relationship with both Katie and Alyssa. The tragic outcome of these dynamics led to a chilling conclusion, with multiple lives lost and a community left in shock. With Stephen Plattle's death, there was no trial, verdict, or sentencing to be rendered. The case concluded with the tragic realization that the legal system had been unable to prevent the horrific events that transpired. Alyssa Plattle, while grappling with her own feelings of guilt and sorrow, continued to advocate for awareness around domestic violence and the complexities of family abuse. She emphasizes the importance of recognizing the signs of manipulation and control in relationships, hoping to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The aftermath of this case serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences that can rise from unchecked family relationships and the critical need for vigilance in protecting vulnerable individuals from harm. The Stephen and Katie Plattle case ignited a wave of shock and outrage across social media and news platforms. Many expressed disbelief at the tragic circumstances that led to the murders and subsequent suicide, questioning how such manipulation and abuse could escalate to such violence. Commenters criticized the legal system for failing to protect the innocent, particularly in the light of the evident signs of abuse. Alyssa Plattle, Katie's biological mother, became a voice for the victims, lamenting the systemic failures that allowed this tragedy to unfold. The case sparked decisions about the need for better mental health evaluations and protective measures for vulnerable individuals. The disturbing case of Stephen and Katie Plattle came into focus in an episode titled "Murders in the Family" from the true crime series Sex, Lies, and Murder. This episode delved into the complex dynamics of their incestuous relationship, exploring how Stephen's abusive past and manipulative behavior led to tragic outcomes. Through chilling reenactments and interviews, the episode examines the emotional turmoil faced by the victims and the systemic failures that allowed the abuse to escalate. Unfortunately, it serves as a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked manipulation and family violence.